Hey everybody, it's me, Steve SCHNEE, the CD Junkie, and on this episode of CD Junkie, it's a 2-for-1, because I'm going to be talking about two bands, but they're both fronted by the same person. The bands I'm going to talk about are Fingerprintz and the Silencers, and the leader of both of those bands just happens to be a Scottish singer-songwriter by the name of Jimme O'Neill, who has been around the music business for quite a while. He's actually been involved with some Stiff Records tours, and he backs some Stiff Records artists and stuff, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the two bands that he fronted. He's an amazing and charismatic singer-songwriter with a very unique musical vision, but that unique musical vision he's managed to twist and turn it throughout the years, and it always comes out wonderfully melodic, but also very different too. But how I got into Jimme and Fingerprintz and Silencers, it all started back in 1979 when I was flipping through the record bins at Licorice Pizza, which was a California record chain, and I came across this band called Fingerprintz. Now normally I bought albums with "the" in front of it, and this wasn't the Fingerprintz, so I had to think about it a few minutes, and the cover was kind of dark, and I wasn't really quite sure if I was sold, but I thought, I'm going to invest a little bit of my allowance into this album. I took it home. It was not what I expected. It wasn't this power pop or this new wave. It was something that was quirky, a little dark, but just absolutely fascinating, and I was drawn to that voice. Then I discovered, of course, that Jimme O'Neill was the singer, songwriter, guitarist in Fingerprintz. But let's go back to the beginning, and I'll go through their catalog real fast. The first album, which is the one that I discovered them on, came out in 1979. It was called The Very Dab. And Tough Luck is one of my favorite songs off that album, because it's very poppy. I think that even power pop fans would like that. Some of the other stuff was quirky. They had a very unique guitar style with these almost angular guitar lines. They weren't cranking out Beatles-influenced guitar riffs or even Beatle-influenced guitar chords. In fact, one of their early singles, they did a cover version of a Beatles song, Do You Want to Know a Secret? And it was very unique. It was very different. So this was not one of those bands that was following that Beatle trend, although maybe there was a little bit of influence in there. But anyway, the following year out comes an album called Distinguishing Marks, which blew my mind. It took the sound of The Very Dab, stripped away maybe some of the quirkiness, just punched up the production, polished it out. Production, by the way, was Nick Garvey from The Motors, who also produced The Motors. He produced Bram Tchaikovsky and some other things, the A's. And boy, Distinguishing Marks is one of the most overlooked, one of the most magnificent albums of 1980. It was big, bold, beautiful. It was melodic as hell, catchy. There was actually a kind of quasi-hit single off of that album called Bulletproof Heart. Actually got airplay on KROQ in Los Angeles. Fantastic album. It really deserves indeed to come out on CD in full. Then they followed that up the next year in 1981 with an album called Beat Noir, which kind of reverted back a little bit to the sort of darker, quirkier, angular sounds of The Very Dab. Still a great record. There are some great songs. One of the greatest Fingerprint songs is on that album called Changing. And then they started sort of going in a more maybe funkier, dancier direction. They recorded a couple songs. They took the Beat Noir album, took off a few songs, added those sort of funkier, dancier songs, mixed everything around, and re-released the album. Had a completely different feel. It was just as good, just a different feel. It no longer felt like The Very Dab. It felt like a new direction, a new sound, but still retained the heart and soul of what Fingerprintz was all about. When that album finally came out in America, they took off a couple songs, so it was even more confusing. But sadly, that was it. After 3 albums, Fingerprintz broke up. And as you can tell, I'm not holding any Fingerprintz CDs, am I? No, I'm not, because I'm going to show you something now that a lot of us fans have been waiting decades for. The best of Fingerprintz, Bulletproof Heart. This is on Rubellin Remasters, and it is splendid and wonderful, and it sounds fantastic. It not only contains tracks from the 3 albums I told you about, it also contains some of the earlier tracks when they had a frontman named Step Lang. But most of this is sung by Jimme, and you're going to just be able to just settle into the wonder of his voice. Very underrated singer, songwriter, and guitar player. Such a unique musical vision. But this is the collection of songs there. Of course, Bulletproof Heart is on there. It wouldn't be called Bulletproof Heart and not have it, but Changing is on here, and so many. You're going to be able to hear just a few tracks from that wondrous Distinguishing Marks album. This is just a wonderful collection. This is all mastered from the original master tape, so it sounds punchy and bold and big and macho, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Fingerprintz, the best of Bulletproof Heart. You need that in your collection, and you need that now. Contains songs from the earliest part of their career up until the end, and it is absolutely fantastic. Now, oddly enough, Jimme went off and I believe he worked with some other artists. Guitar player Cha Burns and drummer Bogdan Vichling or Bob Schilling. They actually went and toured with Adam Ant. They toured during the Friend or Foe tour. And then they played in Adam's band on the Viva La Rock album. Some years down the line, Jimme and Cha reunited, and they formed a band called The Silencers. And boy, when I heard that they put out an album, I was so friggin' excited. And of course, I was not disappointed by The Silencers. A Letter from St. Paul came out in 1987. It's a very different sound, but Jimme's pop songwriting smarts are there. His voice is there. It's maybe a more polished and commercial sound, but it's not, top 40, and it's not aping anybody else. They're just playing this mixture of this great pop with a little bit of folk, and it just sounds absolutely wonderful. Painted Moon's one of the big songs off of here. I Can't Cry, Icy Red. No, not the split end song. Just a great album. Great album. Came out in 1987. Letter from St. Paul. Then the second Silencers album came out, and that's called A Blues for Buddha, 1988. And I guess there's two different versions of this, a UK and a US. I have the UK one, so I guess I need the US one, but they're supposedly different, but I've only got one version, so I can't compare them. But this is another great collection. They were expanding what they did on A Letter from St. Paul, adding a little bit more influences in there, so it didn't sound exactly like that album, but it was definitely just this full, wonderful, great pop music. The Silencers, another great album. Took another 3 years before Dance to the Holy Man came out, and this adds a lot of folk influences. This takes that Silencer sound and expands it even more, bringing in more influences. I heard some folk and some psychedelic here, and guess what they do? They cover the Fingerprintz song Bulletproof Heart. So Jimme O'Neill is doing a cover of a Jimme O'Neill song, and this is another great album. It explores different avenues, but it's still just great melodic pop. And that was the last album, I believe, that was released in the U.S. The band did continue, and they released Seconds of Pleasure. No, this isn't a track-for-track re-recording of the Rockpile album. This is a Silencers album, brand new, called Seconds of Pleasure, 1993. Lots of great songs on there. If you like the sounds of the other albums, you're going to fall in love with this, because it's just another great collection of great songs. If you stopped following the Silencers, or if you never even knew the Silencers existed, I just say put pause now and just go buy everything that you can, and then come back and watch the rest of the video. And then in 1995, out comes So Be It, another great Silencers album. It sounds wonderful, and there's still so much joy in the music that he's making. I mean, I know they were big in France. I'm not going to make any Jerry Lewis jokes. They were big in France, and I was just glad that the band was still fresh, still honest, still making great music, even, this far into their career. I mean, they weren't scaling the charts in the U.S. or whatever, but they were still making music better than a lot of the bands that were scaling the charts. So after that came a best of called Blood and Rain, the singles 1986 to 96. I know that I have that CD somewhere in this room, but as you can tell, I've just got stacks of CDs everywhere, and I could not find it for this video, even though I spent about 3 hours looking for it. But it seemed as if kind of the band maybe might have split up, because by the time Receiving came out in 1998, it seemed like it was a new sound, new direction, new band members, and they took all the great parts from what they were doing before, but they added maybe even more psychedelia. They stretched out even more, got a little more quirky, and Jimme wasn't just handling all the vocals anymore, although he is there, and I believe that there are some family members, because there's at least a couple different O'Neills added to the band. Unfortunately, I didn't get on the internet and do lots of searches, but I listened to the music and I absolutely love it. 2004 comes the album Come, which has the same kind of idea as the last album, which is, Jimme O'Neill with some different O'Neills. And they're doing just a great collection of songs that sort of blends, in my opinion, the direction of this album mixed with the older sound. And that's another great collection of songs right there. And then that was it with the Silencers. This album from 2004 was their last studio release. I believe there might have been a live album or two, but as most of you know on my CD Junkie videos, I very rarely talk about live albums. But what I want to stress here at the end of the video is the fact that I believe that Jimme O'Neill and the Silencers are working on new music, and let's hope that that comes out sometime soon, because this world is crazy and we need more Jimme O'Neill music in it. But until then, search those down, but definitely track this down. This is brand spanking new. Fingerprintz, the best of Bulletproof Heart. You need to get it. It's on Rebellion Remasters, and I will put a link to that in the item card on YouTube, so you can click on it and you can go buy it. Thank you for allowing me to babble about Jimme O'Neill, Fingerprintz, Silencers, and all this great, wonderful music. Remember to stay safe, stay well, like, comment, share, subscribe. That only helps to allow my videos to be seen by more people, and we can share this wonderful music with them. But until the next time, remember me, Steve SCHNEE, the CD Junkie.